All game modes, one build. Everybody knows the rules. Celestial Mechanist. The engineer specialization that gives you a pet robot in return for all your tool belt skills. Let's go over the core mechanics of Mechanist, and I will show one set of gear for some very similar playstyles that you won't need to swap around so much, so you can focus on what's fun to play in Guild Wars 2. Mechanists get to choose what stats and what skills their mech will have by using their traits. You can choose a ranged or melee mech, power or condition, or how much support you give to allies. The build I will be showing is a bit more supportive because the boons that you gain will also be transferred to your mech, so even if I'm not giving my mech insane damage modifiers in the trait conversions, I will be gaining a lot of might, which will then transfer to my mech, all due to a single utility skill, which all mechanists should take. This is the Shift Signet. The skill is so overpowered because unlike most signets which have one passive effect and one active effect, this one has two passives and three actives. So when I think of any mechanist build, I automatically think of Shift Signet as one of the utility skills. You can consider it a core mechanist mechanic because it passively gives you and your mech movement speed. It passively copies boons you gain to your mech, meaning that boons you gain that are also given to your mech will be doubled on your mech. When activated, Shift Signet will stun break you, port you and your mech to the ground targeted location, so you can port mid-cast to give another skill a teleport. You will lose the passive when activating it, but you won't need to worry about that with this build since we'll be using the J Drive trait, which allows Signet passives to persist after activating them. Also, regeneration that you apply will be stronger. The mech itself can be told to attack a specific target and come to you, just like a ranger pet, but it has three abilities that it can cast, and these abilities will all have their own animations which take time to go off before the next can start. And there are even some abilities that aren't on your skill bar that can take up space in your mech's abilities. There's a minor trait which makes your mech use a projectile that stuns when you use your Mace 3, which is also a projectile stun. So Mace 3 is a double stun, but if you're trying to use a specific mech skill at the same time that you use the Mace 3, it isn't going to work. So remember that Mace 3 takes up your mech's animations, and you need to use one of your other abilities after that animation ends. The mech can also be CC'd and not use a skill you queued up, and the mech can be killed. You can desummon the mech by using the F4 ability here, and that will make it go on cooldown based on how much health it has left. So if you desummon it when it's pretty low, it's gonna have a longer cooldown, but if you desummon it when it's high health, it'll have a much shorter cooldown. The whole point of the Mechanist class is the synergy of the mech. So if you don't take care of your mech and it dies, then you don't have an entire trait line that you've invested in. You want to use your Mace 2 regularly to give your mech regeneration in the area, and it will give it twice as much because of the Shift Signet. The equipment I'm using is full Celestial with leadership runes. This gives you the most boon duration and a bit of condition cleanse for you and nearby allies when using your elite skill, because Mechanist can lack cleanses and the thing that kills your mech mostly is conditions. For the weapons, I take a mace with the Earth Sigil, which has great synergy with the firearms trait line. Earth Sigil bleeds when you crit, and when you apply bleed, you will gain might. And when you gain might, your mech does too, so there's insane damage over time with that synergy. Next, you want a pistol offhand with a Malice Sigil, and then a shield offhand with a Sigil of Cleansing. You can't swap weapons in combat, but will essentially choose which weapon to use in which situation. The pistol will be used for PvE, and the shield will be used for World v World and PvP, or if you need more sustain in an open world PvE situation. The traits I take in open world PvE are Explosives, Firearms. Explosives gives you Explosive Entrance, which triggers when you hit an attack when entering combat and after dodging. This attack and many other things count as an explosion, and explosions will give vulnerability to the target. They will grant you fury and have a chance to cripple and bleed the target. Your Mace 3 is also an explosion. The final attack of your mace auto attack is an explosion, and all of your grenades are triple explosions. Firearms gives a lot of bleeding synergy. When you crit, you have a 33% chance to give bleed, you have higher crit chance against bleeding enemies, and your bleeds will last longer. And bleeds will give you might, which gives your mech might. Essentially all the traits in firearms are just hybrid damage modifiers that you don't need to think about. Just know that combined with explosives traits and the sigil, you can trigger many bleeds and gain might, giving you great sustained damage. In Mechanist, take the single edge cutters, which will mean your mech is melee, which is what we want, and it will give bleeds on its attacks. The trait will also make your mech's F1 rolling smash, which is just a leap that does a large stack of bleeding. Then take channeling conduits, which gives alacrity to you and allies who you give barrier to. This means that your explosive entrance will give you alacrity due to blast shield, and your auto attack on mace will also give barrier to nearby allies. And the F2 becomes crisis zone, which will stun break allies near your mech, cleanse 3 conditions, and give them Aegis, alacrity, stability, and protection. You need to be next to the mech to get this benefit, so you can either try to stay close to your mech at all times, so that when you get stunned you'll be in range, or you can use this preemptively for the buffs, which is a little bit more reliable. Then, J Drive will increase the passive effects of your signets and allow them to maintain their passives while on cooldown. Your F3 becomes Sky Circus, which makes the mech leap into the air, and it's evading during that attack. Then it shoots projectiles that burn before landing and knocking back enemies. The skill is pretty defensive and great for peeling enemies off your mech when it's in danger, but I generally don't use it unless I can guarantee enemies will stand still for the CC. Take Rectifier Signet for passive and active heals. With J Drive, you can use this with no cost to the passive for a good amount of healing over time and in burst situations. Superconducting Signet is a passive condition damage modifier, and when activated, your mech will have a pulsing AoE that gives burning, vulnerability, and confusion. And you can use your Mace 2 through that for a dazing strike, which is some extra CC. Grenade Kit is necessary for the heavy bleeding that you can do based on the shrapnel, because you have a 33% chance to give bleeding, but since it hits 3 times, you're essentially getting at least 1 bleed from that trait every time you land all of your grenades on one target. Prioritize the 2 skill, which will give 3 bleeding if you hit all of them, and because of the procs, you can get up to 6 bleeding, as you can see from all of the traits here. You've got the sigil, you've got the sharpshooter, and you've also got the shrapnel. So you have a lot of chance to get bleeding just from using your grenade too. Now, the 4 skill is a power oriented, but it's got chill kind of attack. And the 5 skill is really high poison damage because it can give 9 poison for a really long duration. You can spam 1 if you don't have anything up, but try not to use the 3 because it's really low damage unless you need the blind. Landing grenades can be hard, but if you enable the options here, go down to the enable skill retargeting. This will allow you to change the location of your ground targets if you have instant ground targeting enabled. So essentially, if I'm moving around like this and my target is also moving, it will make the grenades go to where my cursor is rather than where it used to be. So it allows you to change the location of where your grenades are being cast further into the cast time, allowing you to be more accurate. And essentially, you just want to put your cursor on the target or where you think the target is going and keep moving around and throw your grenades on them. If you still don't like using grenades, you can use the barrier signet, which will give a lot of defense to you and more alacrity. But in open world content, usually the grenades are pretty easy to land because the mobs don't move around that much. Finally, take the overclock signet, which passively reduces the recharge of your other signets. If your mech is currently dismissed and on cooldown, activating it will resummon the mech instantly. However, you need to wait a little bit to make sure that the animation is fully dismissed before using it, or you'll just waste your cooldown. Wait for the mech skills in the UI to disappear and then use it, otherwise you'll waste it. Activating it while the mech is still alive will instead make it shoot a laser that pulses heavy burning. If you can trust that the mech won't die anytime soon, then you can use the laser, but it's a risk because if you miscalculate and your mech dies, that's an entire trait line unusable while the mech is dead. If your mech is being focused, save the signet for reviving it. If you are being focused, save the signet for when you need the cleanse from the leadership runes. If no one is being focused, let it rip. The skill priority is very simple. Use your superconducting signet and your F1 to get your mech in the fight and pulsing your heaviest damage skill. Then go in with Mace 2 and your Pistol 4 while using the F2 to get your alacrity and defensive boons. Then use your Mace 3 and swap to grenades. Use all the nades except the 3 and then leave the kit and use your Mace 2 and 3 again if they're off cooldown and Pistol 4 when they're ready. Otherwise, use the superconducting signet, F1 and F2 off cooldown, and you're pretty much, at that point, you're doing pretty well. If you want to provide permanent might and alacrity uptime in group PvE content, you'd want to replace the superconducting signet with the barrier signet, and then take the explosive knuckle to share boons to allies near your mech. Just make sure the mech is near your main target, then take the chemical rounds trait because you don't want to go for selfish might, you want to go for a team-oriented might, and your mech is going to give you might anyways. And then you want to go for explosive temper because blast shield is only going to give you alacrity, not your allies alacrity. So for more team-oriented support, you can go for this in like strike missions, and it'll give a decent amount of support. In World vs. World, the mech is not that useful in larger fights, so you should stick to roaming and small scale fights. Take the Grenadier trait to make your grenades much faster because it's harder to hit moving enemies, and enemy players are usually going to move a lot more than NPCs. Take no scope in firearms to make up for the loss of fury because you took the grenade trait, and replace superconducting signet with either rocket boots or the elixir U. When you're outnumbered, the rocket boots will be much more effective at disengaging, but they also allow you to chase kills down. You'll be using your shield with the cleansing sigil instead of the pistol, so the cleansing sigil can be triggered by swapping in and out of your grenade kit. When fights are too large for you and your mech to go in, you can often get really high might and bleed stacks just by cleaving with grenades. Even when you aren't going in, keep using Mace 2 for mobility and the regeneration and vigor because more dodges is more explosive entrances, and more explosive entrance is more barrier and therefore more alacrity, which allows you to get all of your other skills back sooner. Though if it's possible, going into melee will increase your damage by a lot because of the fury that you'll be gaining and also giving to your mech. Also, try not to lose your mech. Even if you have your overclock signet ready, manage the mech to come to you with the return to me keybind, and if the mech needs to go into the action, remember that the F3 is an evade. But also remember that if you're spamming grenades on the mech, your mech may not always retarget to the target that you want it to be on because grenades are not targeting a specific target, they're just hitting the ground. So for you to actually change the target that you want the mech to be on, you actually need to attack with your mace, or you need to manually tell it to use the attack my target keybind. In PvP, you want to play a duelist role, which means survivability and sustained damage for trading with another duelist is your priority. Also, the firearms trait line is nowhere near as strong in PvP, so the synergy just isn't there. Instead, take the inventions trait line, which can give you lower shield cooldowns and more protection uptime, and when you get protection, you gain cleansing, which makes up for the fact that cleansing sigil isn't as strong in PvP. Also, it'll cleanse your allies, which you can use to cleanse your mech to prevent it from dying in condition matchups, which is the weakness of Mechanist. Also, I take the Herald rune, which gives you protection to yourself and nearby allies when using your heal skill, and that's on a 10-second internal cooldown. Rectifier Signet is a 22-second cooldown, and it can go even lower because of Alacrity. So you gain a lot of protection uptime and cleansing because of this. And since there's no firearms, you want to play a more power-oriented build in PvP, so take the Avatar Amulet, which gives some healing power, which is going to be nice because you have a lot of regeneration, and that'll keep you and your mech alive. And you want to be taking the Energy Cleansing Sigil, that's pretty standard. Then use the Elixir Gun for the unblockable pulsing AoE from Acid Bomb, and that will do a lot of damage on node, which is where you want to be most of the time. Also, since this is a power version, you want to be taking Big Boomer instead of Shrapnel because it's going to give you not only more healing, but also a little bit more power damage. And I take High Impact Drivers because, as I said, this is not a condition build, and the mech can give you some might, which would give the mech even more might because it's doubling up on that might. You can handle power builds pretty well because of the protection, but heavy condition builds and CC can really hurt. If you're in a matchup against a condition build, ration out your cleanses. Your heal skill cleanses 3 conditions because of the Invention's trait lines here, which give protection and cleansing, and of course the Rune of the Herald. So that's a triple cleanse whenever you use your heal skill. You can also use the Elixir Gun 5, which cleanses 1 condition, and you can blast it with your Shield 4 and Acid Bomb for more condition cleanse. You can also use Shift Signet to cleanse 2 conditions, and you can stand near your mech with the Crisis Zone, which would cleanse 3 conditions and give protection, which gives an extra, so that's actually 4 cleanse. Keep up your sustain by using Mace 2 off cooldown, which would give you regeneration and more vigor for more dodges. And keep using grenades to trigger the Big Boomer healing, which you'll be getting passively over time. Some aggressive combos that you can use are the Shield 4 knock into the Mace 3, and to use your Grenade 2 and 5. Or you can use your Shield 5, which stuns enemies when they hit you, and if there's like some pulsing damage down, you can stun lock them with that, and then while they're stun locked, you can precast your Mech's F3, which would knock them and allow you to land a lot of damage on them while they're CC'd by that with your Mace 2 or your grenades. When you're out of those aggressive combos, you want to be kiting with your grenades at all times, keeping up the pressure with that and making sure that you keep your mech alive. You can actually cleanse your mech with the Fumigate here, which would cleanse 5 conditions off of your mech, and then you want to just survive. Since this is a defensive duelist, you don't want to be chasing off node much. Conquer the nodes with your presence and then push out. You can't chase kills too much on a Mechanist. So that's pretty much how you play the Mechanist build. If you like this content, then you should subscribe for more and support me by sharing the video or becoming a patron. I would greatly appreciate that. Also, you can check the links in the description for more, and I will see you all next time.